Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. I'm Joe Chaffee, Joe Rayo, and our special guest tonight, like
Yay!
Bullwinkle, we pulled Rocky. He did finally pull the rabbit out of the hat. We have National Weather Service meteorologist Bill Goodman. He's going to be talking about his views on winter 2020 2021. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider. And it's not just rock salt, of course, but it's just about anything you need when it comes to getting your gear in gear to clear out these winter storms that Bill's going to tell us about, or maybe not tell us about. Rock salt, mag, ice melting pellets and flakes, Petalo premium snow and ice melter, biomelt spreaders, shovels, snow blowers, everything you need to get through the winter. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue, West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125, or go to the website, omnitruevalue.com. So, Mr. Goodman, I have to prove to everybody that you are actually here. As soon as I can get my screen set up over here. Where did it go? Let's try this again.
Oh no.
Oh yes. Hold on a second. God. Hold on, I'll fix it.
I am here.
I know, I see you. Just a second. I don't know how this happened. There we go. Finally. Okay. Just just one more little maneuver and we're there. Okay, we're all on the screen now. Beautiful.
Great.
Life is good, sort of. Okay, so thank you for coming on. By the way, I have my wine with me, my glass of wine, because this helps me think critically, or to be critical, one or the other. Okay, so we had actually, Bill. Before we even get started today, I want to actually touch on a different subject, and that is Hurricane Iota or Iota and Hurricane Eta. I don't know if you saw Joe Rayo. I don't know if you saw it today, but there was an article in the Washington Post regarding the issue. And Joe, you and I have been talking about this because it's come up a number of times. The issue about retiring the Greek names if it's called for. And interestingly enough, apparently the issue is that we have the possibility of both Eta and Iota, if they were regular name storms, uh, being retired, but they can't because it goes into the whole thing with the World Meteorological Organization that they went to the they pleaded with the WMO to be able to retire the Greek names, and the answer they got was no, because they thought that using Greek names was really sort of a special thing. The Greek alphabet was a sort of a special thing to imply a busy season, and they didn't want to lose that context. I don't know about you, but I kind of think that's a little silly.
I think what they ought to do if they next time they run out of names, they should just go on to the upcoming year or the next year and start from the top. I believe they do that in the Western Pacific.
Well, they have a running list in the Western Pacific, so they stop and then they start again. Wherever they stop this year, whatever letter they stop this year, they pick up and they start it again next year. I don't know. I just kind of thought that actually was a proposal that they talked about.
Well,
I think what I heard. I think what I heard was that they were just going to instead of retiring them, they're going to be called Ada
2020 and
Iota 2020.
yeah. I don't know. It just seems kind of ridiculous if they can't just come up with an alternate list of names that they keep. How many times do we go over, blow through the whole list?
not too often. I guess if we did it in 2005, we did it this year. I guess the next time we'll do it. If you go on that schedule, would be the year 2035. But we really don't know, do we? I mean, it all depends upon, I suppose, the tempestuous La Nina or the Enso situation, as to how many storms we get in a given year, but again, it doesn't happen too often. But we'll see what happens the next time it goes around. Maybe we'll have a new set of rules in place.
Maybe we'll have to get a new alphabet. Any other languages want to volunteer their alphabet?
Oh, it does get. I don't know. I just kind of think it needlessly gets out of hand. This is a pretty simple solution. Just have an alternate list of names that you go through. This way, if you want, apparently it's a big deal when they retire these names. Some of the countries, I don't know. I don't want to use the phrase that it's not really a badge of honor, but it does give recognition to the fact that the storm impacted that area in a big way when they retire a storm.
Yeah, I agree. I think just having 2020 after anything that goes on this year is enough to make it significant. Wait.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so you know what? Everybody's here because this is our third try to get you on, and I have to tell you that while we've been talking all this time, and I'm glad we stretched it long enough because I was freezing up in a few spots here along the way. So I wanted to at least, now it's telling me we have an excellent connection. I thought maybe lightning was going to strike for the third time, but thankfully it did not. So let's get started because everybody really is sort of intrigued about the upcoming winter. I would just preface it. I'm going to just preface it by what I've been saying, that everybody is piling on the warmer than normal temperature-wise winter for the Northeast and the northern Mid-Atlantic states, and rather snowless or below normal snowfall for the I-95 corridor. And just because I want to take the other side of the trade, because so many people are piled onto one side, that's my reasoning for going in the other direction. But Bill's going to focus on the science here. So I'm focusing on the cynicism. You're focusing on the science. So let's start off. We've got the Pacific sea surface temperatures up with La Nina in play here.
Okay. Yeah, we have a moderate La Nina event that's already ongoing. Looks like that's going to hold for most of the winter. I don't know if it's going to go towards strong. I think it's going to probably, at least if you look at the all the consensus of models, all different models, dynamical and statistical, that are used to predict it, they're all kind of holding steady. And then they indicate a weakening as we get toward February and March. So you have that in the tropical Pacific, those dark blues that you can see right in the center of the image. That's one thing to focus on. I guess the other thing to focus on is the warm northern Pacific. That's really that's really something. And you not only just have the warm blob in the Northeast Pacific, you're even warm in the Northwest Pacific, which as we go along, we'll talk about the significance of that, especially with the ongoing moderate La Nina.
Right. So I just circled the area of below normal ocean water temperatures from South America, expanding westward almost toward Indonesia, and then you pointed out the fact that the water is very warm in the northern Pacific and in the Northeast Pacific. Now, is this there was an argument for a long time, Bill, that the warm water in the Northeast Pacific was going to be supportive of the idea of a strong ridge in the west and a negative East Pacific oscillation, which is kind of like the North Atlantic oscillation, only in the East Pacific. But that didn't work well the last couple of years. That argument didn't seem to work well in the last couple of years, where we had stretches where the water there was also just as warm.
Yeah, I tend to think the warmth in the Northwestern Pacific it may prevent that from happening, and probably more likely than not just end up with a pretty strong Pacific jet that floods the lower 48 a lot of the time with more moderate Pacific air as opposed to Arctic air. Can't totally rule it out though. It does. I have it I still have it on the radar scope, still in the back of my mind, and we're gonna have to watch how that comes together this winter. But I guess that's just one piece of the puzzle. We got a few other pieces to talk about as we go along here.
And before we get further into this, Joe and Bill, take a look at the waters immediately off of the west coast of Central America. And right there, you could see why the National Hurricane Center did not decide to continue with the path of Iota once it moved out over the Pacific, because that water is, if that's true, that water is much too cold to support any kind of a tropical system. And so that's probably why they said this all comes to an end once that storm moves out over those very, very chilly waters of the Eastern Pacific.
Yeah, I guess you're right, and I haven't really seen any model guidance that's jumped onto this once it brought the low across into the Pacific.
Well,
So
none of them really did anything with it.
yeah, so I can see why, and I'm not sure why that cold blob is there. There's upwelling. I don't think there was a lot of hurricane activity in that particular area that would have, and it would certainly wouldn't have cooled the waters that much.
That is, it is, unless maybe it's an offshoot, maybe some breakaway current from where the La Nina is, and that pushed up northward.
Not sure with that. Have to go back and
you know,
look.
some kind of cold eddy. We'd have to go back and look to follow some sort of cold eddy that may have broken off. What do you think? I know we always talk about the Pacific, and rightfully so. But what about the Atlantic Ocean water profile? Because this is something that I think is misunderstood a lot of the time. A lot of people, a lot of folks jump on the idea that, oh, the ocean is really warm, so that's going to be fuel for big major storms. Not necessarily. And the reverse of that is, if the waters were unusually cold, you could, the opposite argument is made. And again, the answer to that is not necessarily.
I guess so. I mean, you do have a pretty big area of above normal sea surface temperatures. It's in the Northwest Atlantic. I mean, maybe as we go into wintertime, that might support, it might support more ridging in that area, or certainly certainly intensify I guess the temperature differences between water and land, and maybe support a bit of a potential storm track through that area. That could be interesting. And I guess that I do mention that, even though even though most forecasters are talking about the warm and below normal precip, I guess there's still the possibility that that the whole thing that we typically see in a La Nina could shift eastward, and that might support that idea.
That the area that's been above normal near us, that's actually been like that for probably most of the last couple of years.
Yeah, I guess so. I know there's that area below normal sea surface temperatures in a little bit farther northeast from that, and
right west of Ireland.
Yeah,
and south of Greenland there.
I know there's I know there's something that some forecasters refer to called the Atlantic tripole. I have to admit I'm a little bit weak on that, but I think there is some significance to those below normal sea surface temperatures there. I think what may be missing is above normal temperatures a little bit farther south. It looks like when you get into the rest of the Atlantic, that looks for the most part near normal.
Bill, by the way, because Bill Rogers on the chat board is asking, this is a map of a 5-kilometer sea surface temperature anomalies. Can you explain what the significance of the 5-kilometer is?
Okay, that's just the resolution of the data. I guess it. So I guess if you were to zoom in, you would see that this. I guess if you were to zoom in really close, you'd see that what looks like what looks like detailed data is just add the average temperature over 5 kilometers squared.
Gotcha.
Well, the average temperature anomaly. These are the
right. These are below or above normal.
The normal sea surface temperatures.
So the darkest blues are running 2 to 3 degrees below normal. The darkest reds are running 3 to 4 degrees above normal. Is how it works when you look at the actual anomalies.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next graphic, and you've got model predictors of the Nino or the Nina from October 20th. So elaborate, if you will.
Okay. Yes, I was alluding to that earlier, that this is, we're looking at what we call spaghetti plot, all the different model forecasts. There are some that are dynamical models, long range European, long range UK Met, a whole bunch of different climate models that go into this. There are some statistical models as well, and their consensus is for the consensus of those is to maintain a moderate La Nina through the winter. That's not the dark blue line. I think that's it looks like that's an adjustment that the Climate Prediction Center made. Maybe that's their consensus forecast. The model forecast is a little bit warmer, and you can see just from what we just saw from the sea surface temperatures from the previous image. I think that colder solution is probably going to work out a little bit better. So we're looking at on average sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific to be about a degree to a degree and a half Celsius below normal, and that correlates pretty well with certain weather patterns across the United States. And for us, well, I guess we'll normally a moderate La Nina would mean, at least in recent years, a warm winter with below normal snowfall. But if you go back in the past, that wasn't the case.
Right. I remember I saw was it Tony Gigi, I think, from formerly NWS Mount Holly. I think he had mentioned to me about the fact that if you go back far enough into the data and look at the La Nina years, they actually corresponded with snowy winters here. Doesn't that at least say to you, Bill, that there's? I guess the thing I'm having a problem with is everybody is checking one box as if there is only one box to check, and there are so many other factors here that are in play. And I just wonder, I continue to go down this road to say that to make this to make, and I'm not directing this at you at all, so don't get me wrong here. To go simply down the road of saying, okay, we've got this La Nina, it's a moderate to strong La Nina, so nothing else matters, and this is what we're going to have. I don't know. I think to me, and I'm not a long range forecaster, but I think to me that approach might be just a little bit short sighted. I could be wrong.
Well, if you look at La Nina by itself and don't take into account other factors, because as we've seen in some recent winters, it's not just what happens in the Pacific that drives winter. It can be what happens in the higher latitudes as well, where blocking patterns set up, where where's the cold air going to go? How's the polar vortex going to behave? Is it going to stay bottled up like it did last winter,
or is something that should, based on the non El Nino or La Nina, was not supposed to happen that way, if you recall.
Yeah, well, as we go along, I will present other factors that so that we can we can look at to see whether that La Nina forecast by itself makes any sense.
Okay, so now I moved on to the next graphic, which is where you have the years, the La Nina years listed, moderate La Ninas, the corresponding snowfalls in those years, and moderate to weak La Ninas and the corresponding snowfalls for those years. I'm looking here, Bill, 1886, 87. These are New York City numbers, by the way. 32. So using roughly 29 as average. So you've got the first four La Nina years that you cited, the moderate La Ninas, 86, 87, 10, 11, 19, 10, 11, 33, 34, and 42, 43. 25.2 and 10, 11. So that was a little below normal. The other three were, two of them were a little bit above normal, and the 33, 34 winter was way above normal at 52. So there must have been a big storm in there somewhere. And then you look at the ones, though, from 50, 51, 54, 55, 70, 71, 98, 99, 99, 2000, 2007, 2008. All below normal years, 2008, 2009. That's a little deceptive, 08, 09, because while that was an average year in New York City, it was actually above average in a lot of other places surrounding New York City, particularly as you go east, i.e., where you and I live, and 11, 12 was also below average. It's kind of interesting that that those up until right till about the end of World War II in those moderate La Nina years, it didn't really impact the snowfall in a negative way, but then after that it did.
But, Joe, if I could just jump in. Number one, on
Please.
the screen that I'm seeing right now on YouTube, you ran off a whole list of
Oh, I'm
La
sorry.
Nina.
Here, I moved it so you could see the years.
And the other thing is that we were talking about, how different things were with La Ninas, let's say 100 years ago or 80 years ago as compared to now. And I guess that's why the Weather Service continuously updates their listings of data, temperature data and snowfall and rainfall over a span of 30-year intervals. Like, for example, right now, the norms, if you will, are based upon 1980 through 2010, I believe. And once we get through 2020, sometime early next year, I suppose, the norms are going to shift to 1990, 2020 figures, and we'll obviously see some changes in the temperature, and especially so in terms of snowfall. I think right now, New York City, Central Park, the average snowfall for a typical winter is 25.4 inches. I'm certain that when we go to a 1990, 2020 database, we're going to see that 25.4 go up to something like 28 or even maybe a bit higher than that, because we've certainly seen more than our fair share of snow in the last 30 years as opposed to the previous 30-year data set.
I ran the numbers for Long Island, Bill from and Joe from Brookhaven not too long ago, and it brings the number up from about just under 32 inches to about between 40 and 41. Almost a 9-inch increase in the snowfall normals.
I've been saying that December, especially, because when you and I were growing up, Joe, I know that the two of us, we never really see very much in terms of snow in December. We always had to wait till January and February. December was kind of a slack month, if you will. Now, at least over the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've had some whale of a snow, intervals of heavy snow in the month of December, which we rarely ever saw back, let's say, in the decade of the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Really
you could certainly thank those two, the Boxing Day snowstorm and then the snowstorm the year before in December. Both were 15 to 25-inch events, skewing the normals upward. But even in those snowier winters, we also had we saw more events, I think, in total, even though you're going to see those numbers are going to be skewed by those big storms. But all the numbers in New York are always skewed by the big storms. It's because we get them every once in a while. So, you have to pack those into part of the equation. But yeah, it'll be interesting with these numbers because they are gonna go up. Even though the temperatures numbers, oddly enough, are probably going to go up too. Right? Am I
Right.
right on that?
I think so. Yeah. Let's put it this way. I can remember a lot more record highs over the last 30 years as opposed to record lows. In fact, I hardly even remember now in Central Park, New York City, very many days where temperatures dipped to or even below zero. I remember quite a few more of those in our younger days in the 60s and 70s as opposed to the last 30 years or so. So.
All right, Bill, I just moved on to the quasi-biennial oscillation, or QBO. So can you explain what that is?
Okay, that's a measure of winds in the stratosphere over the tropical Pacific. Alternates between west and east about every 13 months, and it usually works in tandem with what's happening with La Nina or El Nino. So if you have a La Nina, usually the QBO is negative, and if you have an El Nino where surface temperatures in the Pacific are above normal, the QBO is also positive. Lags by a little bit. This year is really different because the QBO and the ENSO phase, they're totally out of phase. And with a positive, when you have a negative QBO, what usually happens is that you have more ozone transport from tropical regions to the Arctic. That helps set up a scenario that would help weaken the polar vortex, and allow it to split or move someplace else. So with it being positive, that piece of information alone would suggest maybe the polar vortex is going to behave itself and stay bottled up with not too much blocking or splitting of the polar vortex to bring it southward and give us a lot of cold air outbreaks. But as I say, that's just one piece of information. There's more to go along.
All right. So now let's go to the another factor that's part of this equation, and that is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, or PDO.
My favorite.
It is your favorite. Joe lives for the PDO. I mean, he absolutely lives for it.
I've been saying, Bill, that with all the talk about what is the true cause of global warming and climate change, a lot of people have been talking about man-made interaction. A lot of people have been talking about the sunspot connection. I don't agree with the sunspot connection at all. But what I do say is that maybe we should take a close look at the PDO. In fact, the thought is that 40 years ago, everybody was talking about maybe we were heading for another ice age, and then the PDO did a flip, and all of a sudden now everybody's talking about global warming. Who's to say that maybe in the years to come, the PDO will do another flip back and we'll head back toward a cooler than normal weather regime? I'm just saying that maybe the PDO has something to do with it, and I'd be interested to hear your remarks about it.
Yeah, you're right about that. You do have to subtract these long-term signals from the climate record in order to see what the effect of global warming would be. It's possible. Now, I think the effect would be okay. That we'll still have above and below normal temperatures. Maybe our cold phases won't be so cold, and we've seen that. And when we're hotter. I think it's tends to be a more subtle thing. And you do have to subtract this. I think there's also the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, which has been on the positive side since the 1990s for the most part. And since we've seen that positive phase, that's really where the tropics have taken off, and where we've seen some really snowy winters here in either New York City or Long Island.
All right, so the phase, the decadal oscillation, the PDO, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, just to be clear, to make it clear to everybody, went into a warm phase. I think if I remember reading about it, it was sometime in the late 1970s, early 1980s. I think 1979 was the magic year, and it's been in this warm phase ever since. And Joe Rayo, it's like a 40-year cycle, so it's due to change any minute now. Right in the middle of our show.
Well, it's something I think that needs to be factored in. It's a very unusual. You always hear about people who are making decisions against climate change and global warming, and they talk about the sunspot cycle. Oh, it's the sunspot. You always hear that. You never hear anybody talk about the influence of the PDO, and quite frankly, and either one of you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that climatologists and forecasters have said they don't quite understand why the Pacific Ocean warms and cools over 30 or 40 year intervals, and therein lies something that Jim Witt, when I asked him about this in a report I did for News 12 about 8 years ago. I said, Jim, why is it that 40 years ago they were talking about ice ages and now they're talking about global warming? And he looked straight into the camera and said, because they don't know, Joe. That got me in trouble with the Al Gore's disciples who came at me, left and right saying,
because they know, the disciples know.
Yeah, well, I said, how could you put somebody like that on? And, this is incredible. And what a poor piece of reporting you're doing. And I just said, look, the guy knows his stuff. He's a meteorologist. He's even been awarded, given an award by the AMS, and it's his opinion. Since when is somebody who says something that doesn't agree with your opinion make it wrong or right? So,
Gee, that sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? All right, let's go on to the next one before we get into some more trouble.
Okay, well, but before we go there, I just wanted to say that we're in a cool phase of the PDO, which strangely enough means above normal sea surface temperatures across the northern Pacific, and usually what that tends to do is reinforce whatever phase of ENSO we happen to be in. So that would work to reinforce the La Nina that's going on in the Pacific. Kind of argues toward maintaining moderate conditions through the winter.
All right, so now we're on to Siberian snow cover growth, and you have this is as of November 3rd, so from 2 weeks ago, and the Dr. Judah Cohen's final analysis of the period that he watches, which is that 5 week period, basically the beginning of October to very beginning of November, was wound up being somewhere in the midpoint of the last 20 or 25 years.
Yeah, and I think what we see here, if in the map from Rutgers Global Snow Lab, kind of bears that out. There's a little bit of above normal area looking toward Mongolia, North Manchuria, that part of Siberia that borders China and Mongolia. But when you look back in Western Siberia, closer to Europe, that area was substantially below normal, and I think that offers a clue right there, because usually what we look for in the month of November is the development of strong surface high pressure underneath a large expanse of Siberian snowfall in that area. Being below normal, at least last time I looked, we did not have that development of high pressure. So right away, that tells me that that feedback mechanism that goes from above normal Siberian snowfall to high pressure in Western Siberia to potential polar vortex split as we get into mid to late winter that doesn't look very good for it. What it may look very good for, I guess that area, that suggests maybe that area is warmer. I don't have a slide about sea ice here, but that's probably going to stay below normal in that nearby portion of the Arctic Ocean. So I would think, if anything, if the polar vortex kind of stays together, that it would probably be more toward the North American side as we go into the winter.
All right,
and that could be going strictly with a warm forecast for the winter, that could be a wrench in the works. I'm not sure how that's going to play out yet.
Well, when after we're done running through your graphics, I'm gonna pull up the snow cover right now for North America, and we'll take a look at and also for Siberia, just to see what it's done since then, because I know October's the month that Dr. Judah Cohen watches very closely, but let's see. I thought it'd be kind of curious to see what kind of action we've seen in the last couple of weeks, and not that it may or may not have any significance. The idea, folks, is that it seems there was a correlation with the idea that whatever happens in October in this region has impact on the winter in the eastern part of the United States in both directions, depending on whether the snow cover is above or below normal and where it's above or below normal in Siberia. It was an indicator that actually worked pretty well until my theory was that everybody started jumping on it after the winters of 2013, 2014, and 14-15, and it hasn't worked well since. So it's an indicator that everybody figured was a foolproof one to use, and it hasn't worked well in the last 5 years. All right, so the next thing we got to look at, and this is it's somewhat complex. It is the Madden-Julian oscillation. Mr. Goodman.
Okay. So Madden-Julian oscillation, that's just it originates in the Indian Ocean. Large-scale disturbance of deep convection and winds controls a lot of what goes on in convection in the tropics, and then there is feedback from that into what happens in our latitudes. We can correlate different phases of this oscillation with temperature and precipitation, at least long-term averages for different parts of the country. There's some pretty good correlation there.
Doesn't when you look at the Madden-Julian oscillation, this is one of those things again. Doesn't it have to connect with everything that's going on downstream? Because sometimes it doesn't.
Well, it helps if it does. As I said, certain phases of the MJO could favor cold, some favor snow. I mean, we saw what happened in the tropics this year. Seemed like when like the MJO was, I think once we got to a phase where like the disturbance got back home, so to speak, back to the Indian Ocean. That's when the lid blew off the hurricane season.
Right.
So yeah, you do. That's where these that's where these different phases come in. That I guess if it sort of like with the PDO, it may different phases help different can help different weather scenarios take place.
There are 8 phases, and which phases are the phases that you look for active winter weather in the Northeast?
If I'm not mistaken, we probably want to get toward I think phases 7 and 8. 7 and 8 seem to be the most part. Maybe 1 and 2 also. I guess the changes a little bit as we go into winter. What I don't know.
So right now it looks like, based on this, this was a European forecast from a week ago, if I'm reading this correctly. So based on that, right now we look like we're in phase 5 going into 6. Or am I reading this? Yeah, no, phase 5 going into 6, and then it looks like we go into 7 and 8 sometime later next week.
Okay.
Again, assuming that this was right. Now I don't know what it may be totally different. This was the graphic from a week ago.
Sheer extrapolation, Bill.
Okay, well, the dark line. If you look at, I guess we're looking at the graphic with the 2 different displays of.
I'm looking at the one on the left.
Okay, the one on the left. That's the GFS ensemble forecast.
Okay.
So the black line that starts in phase 5. That's where we were going through October and into early November, and all that spaghetti, that yellow spaghetti that kind of goes through phases 1, 2, 3, and 4. That was the forecast from that point. So given that the MJO is a pretty predictable oscillation, if you follow this, it seemed to suggest that we would eventually get into some kind of cold phase down the line. I think at the end of these forecasts, we're talking about let's see, we get into 5, 6, and 7, probably sometime in the month of December.
Okay. Works for you, Joe Rayo?
I guess it would. Neither one of us is not really that well versed in long range forecasting. I'm just amazed all of these maps that Bill has brought up, and you were absolutely right, Joe. It seems like even at NOAA, they just seem to hang their hat on one thing: the ENSO forecast, and whether we have a strong La Nina or El Nino or whatever like that. At least here, what we're seeing is a compilation of a number of different factors, which I assume when we get to the end of this discussion, Bill will then reveal what he thinks we're going to get for 2021.
And I've already moved on to the next graphic, which is a whole bunch of beautiful maps of the United States with all sorts of different colors. And it looks like this basically breaks down the temperature anomalies and the precipitation anomalies based on what phase we're in.
Yes. So if you look at these, you could see, like, on average from the months October, November, December, on average, as we move toward phases 7, 8, not so much 1, but then phase 2, they tend to suggest a cold, they tend to suggest a potential for colder weather. And I guess all the precipitation composites boy, these drive me crazy. The reds versus greens. I'm red.
No, I
green.
know.
I don't know what they say. I have to ask somebody else, and I think they say below normal precipitation.
I would think red would be below normal and green would be above normal, but they could have had somebody who designed these maps with a sense of humor and just decided to say, you know what, let me make it in reverse. And let everybody think it's the red that's below normal, when in reality it's above. I don't know, but it does clearly show here in terms of the temperature phase anyway that it looks like 8. Well, yeah, 8. 1 is like normal-ish, maybe a little above or a little below in the east. 2 is cold. 3 is warm. 4 is warm. 5 is kind of warm in New England, but it's cold in the middle and southeast, mid-Atlantic and southeast. Phase 5 looks normal-ish. Phase 6, I'm sorry, that was I said was phase 5. Phase 6 looks normal-ish. Phase 7 looks normal-ish with cold back through the lakes and plains. 8 looks cold, northeast mid-Atlantic back up to the northern plains. So yeah, I guess you want to be in phase 7 going into phase 8 and phase 1 going into phase 2. And by the way, am I correct? Because I've noticed there are times where you could be in. It doesn't necessarily that you go from in order. Uh, you could get stuck in a phase for a long time. You can go into like 8, 1, and 2, and then suddenly have the thing kind of loop back around and go back into 7. Depending on what's going on. Correct?
Yeah, I guess that's possible. I'm just sort of going like with the GFS ensemble forecast. That one seemed to be if you would go back to the previous thing
which I did.
The European had been trending toward that. Before that, the European really didn't have much of a clue at all. And if you go back to that previous image we were looking at.
No, it's the graphic comes up on a 30-second delay. But it is up there. There it is. You should have it now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the European doesn't have as much of a clue as the GFS seems to, but what I had noticed is that it was starting to trend in the same direction, and that's one funny thing. When it comes to cold air outbreaks, it seems like lately the European has had a tough time with them, and the GFS long range has picked up on them better.
It's really developed a left bias and a warm bias. I've noticed that a lot lately. Since through the summer and with the hurricane season, it's been too far left with a lot of these storms, and it does seem to be, it's to me, its warm bias has gotten worse.
Yeah, I think so. It's just warm, and I don't think that's in reality, I don't think that's going to work out. I mean, even in a winter where we end up above normal temperature wise or below normal snowfall wise, that's not to say you can have a good, really cold air outbreak or a big snowstorm. Certainly I think it was the winter of 2006, we didn't have much. And then there was just that one February snowstorm that, we had, at least at that time, it was the record for New York City until the 2016 blizzard came along.
27.5 inches, incidentally.
Yep.
Nice.
For the record in 2016.
Nice. Yes, and we participated in that. We shoveled every bit of that 27.
Yes.
Okay, so on to the Arctic Oscillation, the North Atlantic Oscillation, the Pacific North America pattern, and if my glasses. Bill, I think you purposely picked these maps with the print so small. I can't see what the one on the lower right is. Oh, that's the PNA.
That's the PNA.
Right. Okay. The one on the lower, I'm sorry, on the lower left, on the lower right is the PNA. On the lower left is the East Pacific Oscillation. So Pacific North America pattern, PNA, and then the EPO, which is the East Pacific Oscillation. And this was the forecast period. So this was from back a week ago. And so if I'm reading this correctly, because I can't see the dates, but you know what the maps are, you torturer. And we're looking at the European, which had us in a positive EPO phase, right? But it also had a negative NAO. What were the dates on that negative NAO?
Okay. Well, let's see. I think this is going more as we get past the first week of December, maybe mostly the second and third weeks of December, where we could So we're talking about a situation where the Arctic oscillation can turn negative. Also, the North Atlantic oscillation at times, especially later in the period, and even
Okay.
in a brief period of time where we get negative phase of the EPO and a positive phase of the PNA. So this is just because the model timing of some of these things can be off. So I kind of just I squint my eyes and when I look at this and say, oh, sometime in
Well,
December.
can they make these maps sometimes so that we could just kind of zoom them up? It would be make life a little simpler.
No.
Because you know what it is. The older we get, in case anyone is not aware, the older we get, our eyesight kind of decides that it doesn't want to work as well. So it helps. You want to do something kind to us older folk. Make the maps a little bigger, so we
Speak for
don't have.
yourself, Joe.
What's that?
Speak for yourself.
Well, your eyesight's okay,
I
right?
yeah. When I have these two pieces of glass in front of my eyes, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now we got the past history, snowfall
So
and
anyway,
central.
to go back to that, all those things suggest a period sometime as we get in the second, third week of December where we're going to be cold. And when we come out of that, when the AO and the NAO change phase, which could be just a few days before Christmas, maybe we end up with some kind of storm. And if we're cold enough, maybe we get some snow out of that.
Okay. Now that you brought that up, there is something that I want to touch upon with regards to that when we're done with this, because there's been a few things going on. Well, we'll get to it in a bit, so let's move on. So now we've got the past history about what happens, snowfall at Central Park following seasons with less than 10 inches, and it looks like based on this graphic that um, the years that follow were all above the well, it would, yeah, you can only go up if you're talking about being two standard deviations from the normal, below normal, the numbers should all be higher. And as far as the next winter is concerned, it would be really unusual to have the numbers actually come in lower. So all the next winter numbers are higher. But I'm actually pretty surprised at the fact that some of these winters, the snowfall in the following year was pretty robust.
Yes, it was, and most of those winters, I went back and looked at this. We actually, this graphic actually came up in a presentation at our office yesterday, and as soon as I saw it, I said, "Oh, I got to figure out, let's at least see what the ENSO phase was." And with most of them, it was either the following winter was either a neutral
Or weak.
Nino, and we've seen 95, 96. I think that was actually that was a La Nina year, but a lot of these were weak El Nino years or neutral. I think there was just one out of the whole bunch that was off on its own, being a very strong La Nina event.
Which year was that?
I think that might have been 72, 73, if I remember correctly. But even that one was below normal. Yes, so the following winters did almost all of them had more snowfall. Not too many of them. Let's see, 1918, 1919, that's above normal.
Right.
And
1877, 78. 31, 32 is close. The next two were below normal, but not, 19.7 to 23.5. 88, 89 was below. 97, 98 was below. 2001, 2002 was above. And 11, 12, so 12, 13. Now, 12, 13 is 20. Again, depending on where you are, we're looking at numbers at one point. That 26.1 on that year for Long Island 10, 11, and 11, 12, Bill, was double that. It was over 50 inches.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because of the Snowmageddon storm.
And I think that was either, like I say, that was either as far as the ENSO phase, neutral or weak El Nino. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that we're going into a moderate La Nina event after already having a season with below normal snowfall. I think that kind of argues that we're not going to follow we're not necessarily going to follow the rules the way that we have in some of these past winters.
Okay, so now you're putting it all together. So go ahead and put it all together.
All right. So we talked about a moderate La Nina. That could trend toward weaker late as we get into February and even March. Maybe this is going to be a back end winter where we get our cold and snow go late February and into March. That could be a possibility. Because at least some winters that stayed weak La Nina were some of our biggest snowfall winters. 95, 96 is one that comes to mind. So that'll, so something's going to change as we get into late winter. And I think, okay, we'll go on the positive phase of the QBO. I think that's going to help keep the polar vortex bottled up wherever it ends up, less potential for it to split or displace. But I think where it positions is that could be a problem, and I don't know how it's going to play out yet. Okay, and then of course no real big signal from Siberian snowfall, except that we I think Judah Cohn has talked about this, that area below normal snowfall in western Siberia, and also still very low sea ice in the Arctic regions nearby, kind of suggests that if there's going to be any blocking this winter, it's going to set up probably near and north of Scandinavia. That's what we call we call that usually an east-based negative.
Right.
That's usually not good for us. Usually in past winters where I've seen that happen, the storm track tends to be to our west. The northern plains and the Great Lakes can get very cold, and then that cold air tends to just be a glancing blow. If it gets here, it gets in, but it's not here for very long, and it's not especially cold.
And now I have your caveats up there.
Okay. If the polar vortex leans more toward North America, we'll have to watch out. It could be in a position to make us cold, very cold at some points. As we were talking earlier, I happened to go back and look at some reanalysis charts from winter 1933, 1934, and it looked like that was a winter where it did set up across North America near Baffin Island, Hudson Bay. If it sets up there, that might be in a good position to pay us some visits. Bring us some.
So in other words, the 10. So that I'm clear with this. So because I haven't looked at any, redone 10 millibar maps going back that far. So are you saying that the polar vortex itself at the stratosphere level was centered somewhere in Baffin Bay and over Hudson Bay, correct?
Somewhere in eastern Canada. Not so much in a blocking position where the 50-50, where we look for that what we call the 50-50 low.
Right.
But near Greenland, it would be probably more toward Baffin Island, Hudson Bay.
Okay, but the tilt of the low, the actual tilt, so that the flow is coming from northern Canada, you get that cross-polar flow that comes straight down. So the tilt was in a position where it was delivering cold air into the eastern U.S.
Yes, and so that's something that's got to be watched. We don't know. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. So I got to keep it. I got to keep it on the. I got to keep that card on the table. I think
that's actually might be wise, and at the moment, I'll elaborate on that. Maybe that's not a half bad idea. Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
Okay, so if that warm blob in the Northeast Pacific does help set up a ridge in the west, that would mean more a trough in the east, and with the polar vortex being where it is, that might even support the idea of cold a little bit further. I'm thinking, okay, if that happens, that at least we'd be, if that scenario happened, we'd be colder and maybe near normal in terms of temps and snowfall. The thing I'm thinking I think that the ridging over the Western Atlantic is going to hold, and I think if we stay in a warmer phase, if we stay in a typical La Nina phase, I think if you go upstate, to central upstate New York, I think those areas are going to see a lot of ice storms this winter. Past history, I think we go back to I think 98, 99, 99, 2000. Those were some
really big ice storms up that
way. Yeah. Yeah.
So now let's give it a drum roll here. Temperatures.
Okay, so I'm getting on the same bandwagon as everybody else with the way La Nina's working out, but with those caveats, I'm kind of worried that I think we'll definitely see a cold phase in at least mid-September. If the models are a little bit too soon with that, maybe it could extend into late December. I don't know yet. I think at least the second and third weeks are going to be colder than usual, and when we come out of that pattern, I think that's at least a potential for maybe our first decent snowfall.
All right.
If the polar vortex stays bottled up, I can't imagine it's going to stay that way forever. That plus the La Nina weakening suggests maybe something different from that as we go into late February and March. So that's why I say maybe the very late winter might be the time frame to really watch for in terms of below normal temperatures, maybe more chances for snow.
And precip?
Precip, pretty strong signal for below normal. But as Judah Cohen pointed out, and as I just mentioned, if that blob of warm water in the Northeast Pacific, if that holds more sway and helps set up a trough in the trough along the East Coast, a ridge in the West, maybe that could maybe the overall storm track, rather than being to our west, could be closer to us, and so maybe we'd be near normal or above normal precip, and I guess that so. I'd say I'm still leaning toward a warm winter with less snow, but my confidence is real high. I think it probably medium confidence at best.
I think overall, I mean, these are a broad brush. Any long range forecast that takes into account December, January, February, March is you're working with a broad brush. And while the overview looks like, as Bill just pointed out, strong signal for below normal, there's always that chance that you could get one renegade or one odd situation that only lasts for a few days that could deliver in a very short of time a ton of snow. Case in point, we just talked about this 10 or 15 minutes ago, the winter of 2015, 2016. Had we not had that record-breaking 27.5-inch snowfall that it hit on January 23rd of 2016, if you take that out of the equation, that particular winter, 2015, 2016, would have had all of 5 inches of snow. It was just that one.
Well, I would, but again, that's for the 1 point in New York City, because I can tell you from what happened out here that we had more than 5 additional inches out of that. But go on. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, using that again as a general statement that, for a winter that looks like it's going to be, less snowy this particular upcoming season, as Bill has been alluding to, I'm still saying that there is that chance that we get that one, renegade shot that brings us a hefty amount of snow for maybe for probably a good part of the tri-state area. And that's not the only year I can pick. 1982-83, the megalopolitan snowstorm of February 12th that dumped like 2 feet of snow on our area. Up until then, and even after that time, there really wasn't all that much snow. It just so happened that particular week, there was one of the very few cold air masses that dropped down out of Canada, and we had a little storm coming up along the eastern seaboard, and they melded together and brought us one big giant snowfall. But other than that, take that storm out of the equation, and that winter, 82-83, didn't show all that much in terms of snowfall. So for those who are on the chat board right now and are shaking their heads and saying, "Oh no, it's another below normal," hey, there's always that chance that you can roll the dice and get that one oddity that'll make everybody happy. That's why over the last
There's also the chance that the forecasts are all wrong. I mean, I don't mean to sound cynical here, but we're past performance is no indicator of future results, but it's the only thing we have. And what we're doing is, we're basically kind of saying that, okay, this is what we have, and records show that because we have this, therefore the outcome is, we have A, so the outcome is B. And that's a perfectly reasonable way of approaching it. But we do have a certain amount of chaos and variability in play over the next 3 or 4 months. So I would just again go back to the fact that I am not comfortable in a forecast where everybody is look, I could be completely wrong. I'm doing this more on the standpoint of the fact that I tend to be a contrary sort of person. I like taking the other side of the trade. Um, when everybody says it's going to be one thing, I I look at that and I say, you know what? The madness of crowds. I kind of want to maybe take a look at what's going on the other side. So I am just thinking that I guess moderate La
Well,
Nina.
the madness of crowds implies that we all got in cahoots.
No. I
One of us
am not.
started
No,
this
no.
and it
I'm not
snowballed.
that. Phil. You know how I feel when it comes to that sort of that sort of thinking. I'm in no way implying. I'm definitely not saying that everybody got together and said, okay, let's go through the warmer. Let's take the warmer angle this year. I honestly think part of it, and I'm not talking about the folks that really have their head in the game on a regular basis. I have respect for those people, but there are folks that just basically climb on the bandwagon, whatever that bandwagon happens to be. And for years, the standard forecast was colder and snowier because, well, apparently in the I-95 corridor, it's only allowed to be that way. So, and that's led to enough burnings over the years. So I'm just kind of thinking now that everybody's got maybe some sense in looking at what's happening and doing a realistic forecast, that maybe you're going to get burned a second time. I don't know. It's just I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable when there's 100 people in the same room, especially in these
Well,
days of social distancing.
this this is an outlook. It's not. I guess there's a difference between an outlook and a forecast. That's
Right.
going to be the way out here.
Right.
Uh,
Now, I want to.
I mean, the one thing that I didn't just say, okay, moderate La Nina.
No. And listen, I know you put a lot of thought. But no, I respect your work very much, and I have said this, and
Thank you.
I've said this to you. I do, very much. I'm not at all trying to take you down here for your forecast. Everything you say makes sense. I'm just telling you how I'm not someone that's comfortable when there's everybody's kind of saying the same thing. That's been my nature. So I'm just putting it out there. Now I want to touch on what you said though, because you're talking about something let's, instead of going out 3 months now, you were talking about the period in December that you're thinking there might be a window of opportunity, and I would point you to two things. Um, Joe is my witness because I've been saying this now for the last week or so. We're talking about what's going on with the polar vortex, and we know that it's tightly wrapped up. But one of the things that I've noticed now for almost over a week is the GFS insisting on starting in about a week migrating that polar vortex from the shores of Siberia southeastward over the pole, and on this particular run of the GFS today, and also the prior runs, having the polar vortex migrate toward northern Greenland and maybe the northern part of Baffin Bay, because you mentioned that before. And while it's not splitting, it is stretching. And this is something that, and I was very happy to see this because Dr. Judah Cohen, who we've had here before, actually tweeted about this a couple of hours ago, of how the GFS is rotating the polar vortex and migrating it and stretching it. And given the tilt, this might open the opportunity for a trough to return into the eastern part of the United States sometime during the month of December. So there is GFS model support that I see, and and Dr. Cohen's a far greater mind than mine. He sees it, so I felt really vindicated today when I saw that tweet. I was like, "Oh boy, okay, I got it right," because I'm not a big, I don't live in the stratosphere very much. So, but it, so I'm trying to learn this, and I was like, okay, great. So at least I'm seeing this the right way.
All right, and I'm on with that too. That doesn't sound like I'm getting on the warm and the warm and totally unsnowy bandwagon. At least the month of December has some potential there, and
But you see, you can see on
if
the.
the
I'm
polar
sorry.
vortex remains there all winter. That could. It doesn't necessarily mean it'd be snowy, or it could just be cold.
Well, there's nothing that says it can't be cold and dry. Correct. But it doesn't look to, I mean, when you look at where the anomalies are in terms of the heights being below normal, at least in the stratosphere, it does extend pretty far south into the southeastern part of the U.S. Um, what that means, I mean, I don't know what that means from a practical value, I don't know. And the other thing is, this is all fine and dandy, but does it couple? That's the other question. Does it couple with what's going on? Because we saw what happened 2 years ago when the polar vortex split in January, and it never translated below the tropopause.
Yeah, if it then that's doesn't help us that we don't get the polar vortex. You don't get it coming down in position to deliver cold air. I mean, another thing I would say, just in terms of model performance, one thing the GFS likes to make it cold.
Right.
We start to see this every autumn. Everyone at my office gets excited. Oh, the look at all this cold, and I kind of roll my eyes because I know it's going to be too cold. I think the GFS is good at picking up like if there's going to be cold, it's usually quicker than the European to pick up on it. But then it backs off. It's usually too cold and backs off as we get closer. When the European joins in with the GFS, that's when you know what's going to happen. That's a slam dunk.
But I think I don't know, Joe Rayo. Maybe your opinions on this, because we've had a couple of upgrades. Have we had an upgrade done on the GFS this year?
I'm not sure,
Bill?
Joe. I mean, we have one GFS. We have a parallel GFS. I mean, is that going to be the heir apparent once they are confident enough that it can handle certain situations, that they'll phase the GFS that we're using now and bring in the new parallel version? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would think eventually it would come online. I don't know that I think there was an upgrade this year, but I don't think the changes were as major as the ones that took place the year before. I mean, it's really a completely different model in some aspects. Some of the physics from the old model were carried over, so it still has some of the same biases that the earlier GFS had. It's work in progress.
And the GFS still has the same number of ensemble members, about 20 or 21? And it's still like well below what the European has. I think the European has like 51 different members. So in terms of, which computer model is the more powerful, it still is the European from that standpoint.
Yeah, for the most part, one problem with the GFS ensemble, it tended to be what we call under dispersed. It's not really. If you're under dispersed, in other words, that means that its spectrum of possibilities aren't really that much different from the what we call the operational run. I think that's one improvement that we've seen with the latest upgrade of the GFS is that there is more spread and it kind of, which is, I guess, is good in a way, can point us towards some different scenarios. Sometimes the European is over dispersed, so especially with the tropics. So these are biases that we have to live with and recognize.
Let me just say real quick, by the way, for those of you on the chat board that are on my subscription platform on Patreon, I just put up the Zoom link. So if you would like to ask Bill a question directly, you can do that. Just pull up your Patreon page and click on the Zoom link, and I'll let you in. So you have that opportunity. Again, for Patreon members, just just get into your Patreon page and check out the latest post. There's a Zoom link there for you, and you can jump on board and ask Bill a question about whatever he talked about tonight. And by the way, did anybody notice the fact of how cold it was today? I mean, Joe, I noticed the high temperatures in the Hudson Valley in some places didn't even get above freezing. And Bill, here on Long Island, I was actually, I was kind of shocked. I thought we would get back close to 40. Maybe we could say to like 39 but I think the high was 36. That stunned me.
Yeah, it was cold. I was actually at the office today. I was actually forecasting for Boston's area, backing them up today, and yeah, I noticed the same thing. Even going into New England, even down toward Cape Cod, it wasn't warming up. They had, I inherited a forecast with rain showers off the coast. Probably ended up being more flurries than probably more snow than rain out that way today.
Bill, Janet Forbes Dunn, the big cheese of the Northern New Jersey Weather Observers, has joined us here on the chat, and she has I'm sure she has a question for you.
Hi, Janet. We
Hi,
know each other.
guys. Yep. How are you?
Doing fine. How are you?
I'm okay. I was just wondering with this setup that we're looking at, and I had asked this on the chat board and someone else had answered, but are you thinking more apps runners if we do get some cold, or coastals? Do you see the opportunity for really coastals this year where we would get a lot of mixing and a lot of mess, or apps runners or clippers?
Well, if we follow the moderate La Nina script, I think we're going to see more in more Appalachian runners. That's going to keep us warm.
Yeah.
That for precip events, at least what I looked at past winters, we tend to go snow to rain. Inland, a different story. They'll go snow to freezing rain. I think if that holds, it's going to be a mess when you go upstate. Toward Albany, the Poconos, probably a much better chance to see a lot of ice storms this winter. I still think there's that 1 in 3 chance that the polar vortex may set up in a place that we end up with more cold, and maybe the storm track is closer to us. I don't know if that means right over us or just south and east. I'm going to wait and see. I think I think a couple of winters ago I had gone with a forecast. I started off cold and snowy, and then there was I guess the thing is that making an outlook here, and I will adjust it according to what's actually happening. We get into December and things don't work out as planned, then they got to reevaluate everything. And but right now, that's kind of where I'm sticking. That there's probably only about a 1 in 3 chance of seeing that type of scenario this winter.
Yeah, Janet, you know how it is in Bergen County. We're always on that cutoff. Of just warm enough that we don't get the snow, and just go a little further west and they get the snow.
Does Bill know about, what is it, 17? Is 17 your rain snow?
17.
Route 17 apparently is Bergen County's version of the Long Island Expressway as far as rain snow line.
Route 17, yeah. When I lived in Bergen County, Route 2, going up the hill on Route 208, that was the rain snow line.
That too, yeah. Going out northwest, or if you're going north, Allendale, the Allendale Waldwick area would get snow, and we would get nothing on this side of 17, or very little. That was another.
Joe Rayo could tell us all about the 287 rain snow line, or the Route 84 rain snow line.
Well, 287 has always been used, even by and Bill can back me up on this, at over in Upton, the National Weather Service Forecast Office. They split Westchester down the middle. Actually, it's not even down the middle. We could call it the Westchester waistline. The upper 2/3 north of 287 is where the snow usually falls, and the lower third below 287 is where the rain changes over to snow. So that's where they usually split northern and southern Westchester at 287, right, Bill? Or
yeah, that's right. There's I think the split, it doesn't follow 287 exactly. I think it kind of cuts across. Starts north of White Plains and then cuts across 287, if I remember correctly. But close enough. And oftentimes, if I'm forecasting, I'll actually reference 287, the Tappan Zee Bridge. That's an old standby.
We use there are two different corridors for snow or snow amounts. There's 287, and then you have to go further north up to 84. 84 is another corridor that is often used, not so much for rain versus snow, but for the amount of snow. Usually the heavier doses of snow usually occur north of 84, and less snow occurs south of 84. That also cuts across northern Orange County and then kind of swerves south and eastward and cuts over the upper, a little bit of clips the northeastern part of Putnam County. So it's another interesting boundary line that you could use during the winter time.
Patreon members, just a reminder, the board's open. I put the link up to the Zoom. Janet's on here. I put the link up, the Zoom link up on Patreon. So just go to the post and click on the link if you want to ask Bill Goodman a question. This is your opportunity. And Mr. Goodman, what are your thoughts on? I said this yesterday, and I'd be curious as to what you think about this. Um, if we're going to get, if we're going to see a wholesale change in the pattern, I think one of the clues is going to be, is this hurricane season finally going to shut down? Because as long as we keep getting, my theory is, if as long as we keep getting these late season storms in the Caribbean, all that really does is it reinforces the southeast ridge and the Gulf of the upper high in the Gulf of Mexico to the southeast coast. And if we keep getting tropical systems developing in the Caribbean, that's going to keep the ridge there in place.
Yeah, I don't think we're completely done yet. I think from what I saw in the models that that maybe there could be yet another system in the Western Caribbean, as if Nicaragua and Honduras need it. That one, I don't see the models jumping on it the way that they did on, especially the GFS. The GFS has been great on picking up on getting the early signals on these systems, and it's not really. It just has a broad area of low pressure that develops in the Caribbean and even up toward, I think, the Bahamas and Bermuda. I think if it develops anything, it's on the northern end of that. Maybe we'll see a tropical storm that develops near the Bahamas, goes near or past Bermuda. It seems like this year the storms like to keep visiting the same places. This would be like the fourth one. If something happens there, the fourth one for Bermuda. I think they were.
Well, how many in Louisiana?
I think there's at least 2 hurricane hits in the same place in Louisiana, and that's not even counting whatever tropical storms.
Right, 2 hurricanes. Right, two hurricanes within landfall. The Louisiana landfall was basically inside of 20 miles of each other, and the 2 hurricanes in the Caribbean in the last 2 weeks, Ada and Iota or Iota, landfalling 15 miles apart.
And don't forget Faye and Itzia for us.
Right,
Exactly.
Faye and Isaias, yes. I hope they retire the name. I'm sorry if your name is Isaias. I'm not trying to offend you, but you know what? That caused so much consternation in terms of how it was supposed to be pronounced. Somebody needs to get the word to the folks. Okay, keep them simple, because we're not very good with that sort of stuff. I can get most of them, but even this one, this one threw me off.
Yeah, it's awkward for us English speaking people. That's not a that.
Well, have you guys been saying?
Twister.
Have you guys been saying Iota or Yoda?
I haven't been saying Yoda. That sounds like Star Wars.
Well, because if you use, Greek and Italian, the languages.
Iota. Okay.
Iota. So if you say it really quick, it could be Yoda. The IO vowels together make it sound like almost like a Y. Okay. But no matter. It's just me. For me.
No, you're right, but no one. Yeah, but no one came along and said that's the way you're supposed to.
Right. Iota. I don't give an iota.
That's right.
Use it in a sentence. Janet, do you have any other questions while you have Bill here wrapped up in your around your finger?
Just real quick, when you were forecasting, you were on duty the night that the storm blew through the other night.
Yes, that's
right. You were putting
right.
out the watches and the warnings, and you had a fun night. Did they ever go back? Did they ever go out and survey anything over here? I know I saw one post that they weren't planning on it, but
not to my knowledge. I don't know. I mean, I know there was. I think we did hear from someone in Ridgefield Park, and seemed like it was straight line wind damage. Of course, the problem with fast moving storms is that even a tornado won't leave as much of a telltale sign. Everything, you'll probably still get straight line wind damage with that, and then it comes down to maybe looking at the width of the path or what happens at the end of it. Is if it starts to fan out at the end, maybe there's less chance of it. But as far as I know, we did speak to someone in Ridgefield Park, and it at least the description that we got, I think we got some photos too. It didn't seem like didn't seem like tornado. There are a couple other places we looked at. Old Greenwich in Connecticut, even this way in Calverton. There were a couple of storms that really looked good, and they had that classic signature, the squall line, that the S-shaped squall line with a break in it. That's when I used to work at the Mount Holly office, I can remember a situation like that produced an EF2 tornado. So they're they can when they can do a lot of damage. They're not to be messed with. That's
Yeah, I had someone had reported that there was a tornado seen in Ridgefield Park, Fort Lee, but then I didn't see anything on the news. I didn't see anything else. And then I was checking, the Upton site, and they said there were no plans to go look. So I figured, I don't know, maybe it was just funnel cloud, maybe, or like you said, the winds, they just assumed.
well, we don't know. I mean, it wasn't nighttime. It would have been a little bit harder to see if we.
Yeah.
If we got photo evidence, we look at it and could change our mind. But right, the way things stand right now, no conclusive. At least looking at the damage that we saw and the reports that that we're getting from people in those areas, nothing conclusive enough to say tornado.
Yeah.
Joe Fernanda has joined us. Joe, can you hear me? Joseph? Joe Fernanda? Ethel to Tilly, come in, Tilly, over.
Is it Ferranda or Fernand?
Ferranda, Joe Ferranda. Yeah. Are you there, Joe?
Joe!
You got to unmute your mic, Joe. He's listening, but he's not hearing me, or I'm not hearing him. All right, Joe, if you can hear me, just keep talking and see if you can check your mic levels. When we hear your voice, I'll know you'll be there. So what do you, if we're going to put an over under, let's put an over under. Pick the number 20. Oh, hey, Joe's got his count. Joe, you're there.
Joe.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Bill is right above you on the left. Go ahead with your question.
All right, I just had this one question. Do you think the Pacific fire hose will return anywhere from December to mid-January, or will it be a more zonal flow?
Joe, you know how I love the Pacific fire hose.
Yeah, could you forget that?
I think that's more likely to happen than not. But if we're going to play the over/under game, it sounds like you're going that way with Snowfall in a minute, Joe. I think the odds are in its favor. I'm going to go, at least in terms of that, I'm going to go 2-1 that we see that this winter. And
all right, but I'll pick let's pick 25. Let's use 25 as a base. Okay, so let's use 25 as a base. Joe Rayo, over or under? Well, let's do it. Let's do this. Over and under for New York City, and then give me an over and under for Putnam Valley.
I hate to tell you this. I know it's used often in football and gambling or whatever. I never could understand what over under means.
So, in other words, so if you think it's going to be more than 25 inches, you want the over. If it's going to be for the season, if it's going to be less than 25 inches, you want the under.
I think we're going to be over in both New York City and in Putnam Valley. Believe it or not.
You're going to go over. Okay.
I'm going to go over.
Bill, what do you think?
And I might point out, let me
go ahead.
That I think that 25, I've been thinking, continue to think that overall it's going to be not much of a winter. I'm still looking for that one big woof. And whether it happens in January or February, but I think that's where we're going to get the lion's share of our snow is going to come from one big storm as opposed to a bunch of little ones. But I think in the overview of things, it's going to be over 25 inches when this year comes to an end. Season comes to an end.
Well, you may very well be right, Joe. I mean, some of these things that I was talking about that could put a wrench in the works, they may. I don't think they'll define the whole winter, but we might have a pretty good cold outbreak. We might have one big snowstorm. That remains to be seen. As far as over under, I'm going to go under for New York City, and I think it's real. I don't know which way to go for Putnam Valley. That could.
Well, you could also go for Long Island too. So you can include Long Island on that.
All right, I'm going under for New York City and Long Island. I'm going to go over.
Coward. Coward. Go on.
Under for New York City and Long Island, over for Putnam Valley.
All right.
By the way, I've been up here 18 years, and we only had, for the entire winter this past year, a little over 10 inches, and I only had to bring out my snowblower 4 times. It was an incredibly non-eventful snow year up here, and I can tell you, there were years where we had like upwards to 70 inches of snow, and I brought that blankety blank machine out at least a dozen or more times.
Listen,
So
Joe, give Bill Mrs. Rayo's number in case his snowblower goes out, because Joe, Mrs. Rayo fixes snowblowers. I'm not kidding you. She won't let him buy a new one. She repaired the whole thing from scratch.
well, we did eventually buy a new one because the one that we had went through a lot of rough winters. We had like 16 or 17 rough winters, and the one that we have now is a relatively new, 1 or 2 year snowblower, and we'll see whether or not we can give it a workout in the weeks and months to come. But from what Bill and I are thinking, I don't think we're going to be seeing too much, except again maybe one big woof sometime during the winter season.
All right, Janet, you hold on for 1 second because you'll get part of this. Joe, Ferranda, think about what your over under is. Izzy D is on, and he might have a question for Bill.
Hello there.
Going?
The question is, I came in late. Do you think that we might be in the same sort of trend like what happened, as Chaffee says many times, happened in the 80s, I believe it was, where most winters were pretty much snowless. So like we might have turned to that sort of decade now. Like we might be on some sort of roll, at least where I am in Lakewood, New Jersey.
So Izzy, what you're asking is, when I talk about the fact that in the last 20 years we seem to have been in what you could probably describe as a cyclical bull market for snow, as opposed to the prior 30 years, 1970 to 2000, where we were in basically a cyclical bear market for snow. So that's what you're going at with this question, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe you said like the 80s were probably the least snowiest. So even if we're not in a 30-year downward cycle, maybe we're in a 10-year downward cycle. Could that be?
Oh, I mean, you can certainly have bust years when you're in a favorable cycle that lasts 20, 30 years. I think we've had some hurricane seasons and some winters where we didn't do as well as we had, and as Joe Ray pointed out, it seems like we've had more winters than not recently, where we get most of our snow in one big event, and the rest of it is home. So I don't know. I don't know where we're at with this yet. Like I say, I don't think this winter is going to be a big deal. If we we return to like an El Nino, I think that's going to change.
And the thing is that especially where I am, it just takes so much to get. It's been lacking here. I mean, we've been.
He's in Lakewood. He's in Lakewood, New Jersey, in Monmouth County.
Okay.
Ocean.
Oh, I'm sorry, North Ocean.
Ever since the winter of 15-16, it's been lacking over here. That winter was a very interesting winter of 15-16, where I remember walking outside. There was like a foot of snow still on the ground, and it was 83 degrees in February. So that was almost my kind of winter, I call it, where it was warm and dry. And then when it got cold, there was storms. But almost every other winter where I am, it seems to be the opposite. It can be freezing and dry. A day like today didn't get out of the 30s. But wait, here comes 50s and 60s and rain. Do you see that happening for my area in this winter? Or do you think there's still some chances that we can get cold and snow?
Well, I don't know that it would be as I know when you go into southern New Jersey, there were some places last winter that I don't even think saw an inch of snow for the whole winter. I think looking at past history, I think that's very unlikely to happen. I think that more likely than not to be below normal enough in terms of snowfall for the whole winter. If I had to do an over under for 25 inches, I would say under going into central southern New Jersey.
3 inches for me last winter, 10 inches for the prior winter. Hopefully we'll be able to get more than the 13 that the last 2 winters gave us a total of together.
Yeah, I hope so. I just I don't know if this is going to be the winter, or if it is. One thing I talked about earlier is that the might, if we do get into typical moderate La Nina winter where we don't see much snow and it stays mild, I think as we get toward late February and March, that could be a more interesting time frame. And before I had mentioned maybe sometime in the week before Christmas, there's probably a good potential to see some if we get cold enough.
Of course, there's already snow potential behind you going on right now, so
Bill's cheating.
That's virtual snowfall.
Yes, it is. Well, these days we settle for what we can get.
Wish casting.
Right, Janet. You're over under so you can do Bergen County and you do Bergen County and you can do Long Island too. Take a stab at it.
Under
for you.
for both.
Under for both.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the only people that have hope is like Albany and West.
Okay.
You know, I think we're too close. I would love to have more. Give me 40 inches, no problem. But I just don't feel good about it this year.
All right.
Trend hasn't been too favorable, I think.
Joe Ferranda, you there?
Yep.
Okay, so are you a weather enthusiast, meteorology student? Both?
Yeah.
Yes, on both.
I think New York City at least is barely going to be below average at 24 inches, but on Long Island,
so you're cutting it close.
Yeah,
you're cutting
close.
a real close shave here. Go on, 24 below. Okay, go ahead.
And then rest of Long Island, I think will be slightly above. You'll get that one big nor'easter, like Joe Rayo said.
Attaboy.
But yeah, I think Long Island be slightly above and New York City slightly below.
Where are you on Long Island, Joe?
Right by Levittown, actually.
Okay.
So
you're not in the Suffolk County snow belt.
No, sadly, no.
That's my old stomping grounds. I lived in Levittown for a good number of years. A lovely area.
Yeah, it is.
Until I moved up here.
I'm actually going upstate this weekend, so that's going to be great.
It's going to warm up and rain all up there too.
Yeah.
It should have went up to yesterday and today. At least in some places they had a little bit of lake effect.
Yeah, I wish.
Izzy, since you're in Alan Casper land, which means everything turns to ice pellets and rain, what's your over under? 25 is the magic number. Under or over 25 for Ocean County?
I'm going to say I tried figuring it out for Lakewood specifically, 27 to 28. So somewhere around the 27.5.
So you're going over.
I'm saying as our normal average.
Okay, so but you're 25 is the number I'm using as the over under. So you're saying more than 25?
As far as a prediction or as far as where our normal stands?
No, as far as a prediction.
Oh, prediction definitely below that. I'm going to say yeah.
Go ahead. You don't have to give a specific number if you don't want to. You can just you're
18 to 20 inches, somewhere in that area.
You're slightly under, but not too far under.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'm the only one that hasn't put. Well, Bill, you put yours. So I guess I'm the only one that hasn't put. I am going to be the contrary indicator. Okay. I am going to be the contrary indicator. I am going to say it's going to snowfall wise. It's going to be above for everybody, and maybe.
I said that. Didn't I say that?
Did you say above for everybody?
I said above for New York City and above.
Okay, so I'm gonna use Price is Right rules. So I will go above +1. So whatever Joe says, I'm adding an inch to, or a tenth of an inch. I think, I guess because of the fact that I'm really doing this basically just to be contrary and be cynical. I recognize the fact that everything that seems to be on the table would point to a below normal winter. But as I've been saying all through this show and all through our other shows recently where the subject has come up, I am not comfortable with being on the same side of the trade as everybody else. I'm going to take the other side of this. I just like last year when everybody, a lot of people were looking at that, neutral Enzo and everything else, and the polar vortex locked up in a way that it usually does when you have a strong La Nina or a strong El Nino. And I just think that maybe what we're seeing now, maybe the models are picking up on something going on in the stratosphere that might make things a little bit different. So I'm going to just go above, and I think we probably will get at least a couple of stretches where it gets fairly cold. Maybe a couple of really solid below normal stretches that last more than a couple of days. That's my never to be humble opinion.
I
Well,
hope you're right.
Bill brought up a chart before about years that follow a lack of any significant snow years, but he had 10 inches. It does years that had 10 inches or less. I did something similar, but I sliced that in half. I looked at years that had less than 5 inches. Last year, we only had 4.8 inches at Central Park. Now, this is just for New York City, Central Park. This doesn't seem to work, this statistical detail for any other areas. But I found there were three other times when we had less than 5 inches of snow in the 169-year history of Central Park observations. 1918, 1919, 3.8 inches. 1972, 1973, 2.8 inches. That is the all-time low for snowfall in New York for Central Park. 2001, 2002, 3.5 inches. And as Bill pointed out on his chart, the very next year after those years where we had a lack of any snow, boom, winter came back with a vengeance. 1919, 1920, 47.6 inches. 73, 74, 23.5, 2002, 2003, 49.3. So if you take that at face value, assuming, proportional scales and everything, we should see anywhere this upcoming winter in Central Park, anywhere from 32 to 67 inches of snow. Based upon the amount of snowfall, the ratio, how much it jumped from the previous snowless winter season. So we shall see. That's another reason to say this winter at Central Park in New York City will be higher than normal. The normal, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, 25.6 inches, but that's based upon 1980 to 2010. I'm sure once we're finished with 2020 and they come up with a new 30-year data set, we're going to see a few inches added on to the average for New York City. I'll bet you New York City will probably go up to like 28 inches for an average for winter season once we change the data set.
Bill, two more questions for you. Ready?
Sure.
So the chairman, Scott Briller, who's we call him the chairman because he's the big cheese on the chat board, and he's also gives us what we call Briller Jeopardy with a little bit of weather trivia and sometimes non-weather trivia, but these are not trivia questions. So he left them for me because he's working tonight. He does COVID runs, helping folks out, delivering stuff. And his two questions are, there was something with regards to the extreme wind warning, possibility of adding that to the equation. And I don't know what this proposed changes to the Upton radar next month. Can you get into that a little bit?
All right. Well, the thing about an extreme wind warning is something that's only it's only used when the eye wall of a Category 3 hurricane is moving onshore, and we expect winds of 115 miles an hour or greater, sustained winds. So that would almost never get used here in the Northeast. I guess the question is, we're just accepting feedback from our customers, weather enthusiasts, anybody who's interested in making suggestions. Maybe that number should be lower for the Northeast. We barely see sustained hurricane force winds. Maybe for this latitude that should be if we get a Cat 2, or maybe it should just be used anytime the eye wall of a hurricane's moving onshore. I guess so we're soliciting ideas to try to figure out what we're going to do with that.
Okay.
That's not impossible though, Bill, because we had two storms. The Great Appalachian Storm of November 25th, 1950, coming up the Appalachian Mountains. I think Newark Airport reported a wind gust, not a sustained wind, thank God, but a wind gust of something like 110 miles an hour. And Hurricane Donna in 1960, I don't know, I forget exactly what station reported 100+ mile per hour winds, but we also had winds of that magnitude with Donna. We've had nothing remotely approaching that since. Uh, who's to say? Well, I'm not even going to think about saying this in this crazy year of 2020. So whether or not we're going to see that happen again, but it's not impossible to see, at least in the New York metropolitan area, that kind of wind. But it as you can just see, with only two of those in like the last 70 years, it don't happen very often.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess the idea is for folks like us who don't see storms of that magnitude, Category 3 or greater, maybe the bar should be set lower for using that extreme wind warning, or maybe it should be used anytime the Iowa hurricane moves on shore, no matter what the cat. I guess so. We're taking input, and I guess we're going to make a decision how we handle that. I don't know the answer. I have my opinion about it. That's kind of implicit in what I'm saying. I do think the bar should be set lower here, but I'm not the big cheese. The folks who make the decision they're down in Silver Spring, Maryland, at the Weather Service headquarters.
Okay, and are you on shift tomorrow?
Yes, I am. Daytime.
Then you got to, you're gonna. So we'll make this the last question. And
no, I'm good.
You're good. You don't need a cup.
Yeah.
You don't need a cup of coffee. Could have used one last night.
Oh, last night, yeah, because
I am publicly shaming you.
Oh, you're doing a good job so far too.
Yes.
Bill, you're at the Weather Service. You guys are on swing shifts, right? So in other words, there's a few days you could be on the early morning shift, and then you could switch over to the midday or the afternoon, and that does something to your body, doesn't it? I mean, like
when he does those 6 midnights in a row, or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, Sometimes I lose track of what day of the week it is. I have to ask someone in my family what. It's difficult. It's a grind sometimes. The funny thing is, the harder the midnight shifts are, the more quickly I bounce back. I almost dread having a good run of midnights because I know when I try to get back to normal, it's going to take forever.
All right, so
strange. The human body's strange.
So here's our last question from Johnny Quest, who's also one of our Patreon members, but he's a little camera shy. So anyway, he messaged me and he said, we've had a Category 5 hurricane every year for the last 5 or 6 years. Okay. Is that the new normal, or because Joe can attest to this. I mean, we went between Camille and Gilbert, we went something like 16 years without seeing anything close to a Category 5. And they do seem to be coming with regularity now. So is this the new normal, or is this just, we're in some kind of, cyclical high upturn here?
Could be cyclical. I mean, we're still in that positive phase of what we call the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, and we've had more active hurricane seasons as a whole, more intense storms. If we go back to something, where we get back to a negative phase of that, we could go back to I think like it was the 1970s and 1980s, where we see below average number of storms. Most of them not that intense, but probably still just maybe one during the year that still at least gets to Category 4. I don't, I mean, people ask where global warming fits into this whole thing. I don't know. There are folks that say that since the warming would be occurring not just at the ground but through the atmosphere, that maybe we'd see less tropical activity in the long run. There are others that say, maybe they'll the average intensity would only be maybe a few miles per hour stronger. That it would just barely be noticeable. So those are just some of the ideas. The other thing is just with the satellite technology that we have these days, and just the observing capability that we have, we're seeing a lot more of these things, and we have to take that into account. How much of that is just because we're better at seeing things than we were in the past?
I agree with that, Bill, because how many times have we seen tropical systems just this side of Lisbon, Portugal? I mean, there have been cases where I've said, and I've said this to Joe, and I've said this here on our show. I mean, back 20, 30 years ago, they being the guys at the National Hurricane Center, would they have categorized that or given a storm like that a name? GO 16 is so much better than the satellite information that we had at our disposal 20, 30, 40 years ago, that, yeah, I think we're picking out systems now and giving names and pointing to various tropical systems that we would not have done all those years ago. So that, I'm not talking about, the entire, we've had about 30 storms this year. I'm not saying that, 15 of these storms wouldn't have been categorized 20 or 30 years ago, but there have been at least a small percentage that I think would have gone through the screen, so to speak, and not have been categorized. But with this new data that we now have at our disposal, we're now looking at more and more storms and saying, yeah, this is a tropical system, this is a tropical system, as opposed to, again, back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, the Hurricane Center used to have a rule that this is going back a long time ago. Thou shalt not name a subtropical storm. That you can call it that, but we're not going to pay it. So some of these storms that are out in the far eastern Atlantic, they're not maybe not purely tropical. I know that I mean, in a lot of hurricane seasons there are a couple of unnamed storms, but not the number that we've seen. And there's probably I can think of a couple of years just these tiny little storms that if we didn't have
there was the one last year. I think it was the B storm. That was basically, the gales extended out 10 miles from the center or something like that.
Yeah, I think I mean, we have the scatterometer that can actually see measure wind speed, and in the past we might not have done anything with that, or
yeah, it was basically a severe thunderstorm. That's basically what it was. I got two other things. Robert Brown left me a question. He's also one of our regulars on the chat board here on the show, and he's on my weather site, my subscription weather site. He left me a question. This hurricane season, in terms of the number of storms, has been very active. Clearly, we set a record. We're at 30, and who knows if we'll get to another one or two. But in terms of the number of storms that actually became major hurricanes, it's only really been the last month that we've seen a run on them. And when compared with 2005, the other record year, that was just absolutely loaded with majors. So he was wondering whether we saw a lot of Saharan dust in the first half of the hurricane season, and whether that might have played some kind of role in terms of maybe getting in the way of some of these storms from intensifying out in the Atlantic a bit faster than they didn't intensify as quickly as they might otherwise have had it not been for the Saharan dust issue.
That could be possible. When you have a lot of Saharan dust, that air is very, very dry, and never mind the dust, just the presence of that dry air is going to inhibit development. There's always those one or two storms that seem to defy. I think we've seen a couple this year that seem to defy even that and still developed anyway. They're not coming to mind, but I do remember some discussion from the Hurricane Center about one or two storms behaving that way.
So I have one of our other regulars, Timothy Veltman. He lives up in the Albany area, and he says he sent me a message here. He says, I claim camera shyness like Johnny Quest. So the over/under average for Albany. So he says the average in Albany is 60.3. So he's going to go for 45 based on all the years that he looked at with high numbers of 80 and 90 degree summer highs. All had 45 inches or less snow in the winter. Okay, so in Albany, a high number of 80 and 90-degree high temperature days has translated into the winter that follows into being a below normal winter, according to the numbers that he's looked at. However, contradictory to that, he says that the Novembers with the highest severe weather and tornado outbreaks, and they've had, two this month in the Hudson Valley. Uh, Novembers with the highest severe weather and tornado outbreaks, all of those winters had 90 inches or more for the winter up in Albany. Interestingly enough.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those is 95, 96. I remember a lot of strong cold frontal passages that November. So maybe there's something to that. I guess the question is, if you're going to go over under up Albany way, there ought to be an over under for ice. As I was mentioning earlier, I think when you go from the mid Hudson Valley on north, I think if we get these inland runners, I think the potential for ice storms is going to be a lot greater than usual.
Janet, last chance. While you're here, last chance. You're okay? All right. Joe Ferranda, last chance. You're good? All right. So, Bill, here's what we'll do. So here we are. It's November the 18th. So, and you and I will talk along the way many times between now and then. But what if we at least, and you as I've told you many times, you can shoot me a message anytime you want to come on and play on the show. We have a very big sandbox here. We've got swings, we've got slides, we got all the all the fun stuff.
Got red wine too. That's
and yeah. See, I'm thinking critically because it's the glass. Not only is the glass empty, but I can make it disappear in my chroma key here. But you're always welcome anytime. But why don't we come back for sure sometime around, let's say, middle of January, and review, and maybe do a second half. We'll have the first half under our belt, so then we could maybe look ahead to the second half, and we'll see.
Could be then sometime after Christmas. If things are gonna go haywire, I think we'll probably know by end of December. So,
by the way, Tim Veltman points out that in the winter of 95-96 in Albany, they actually finished with under 75 inches. New York City actually beat them that year. Because they didn't get anything out of they for the most part they missed out on the blizzard of 96. They got some stuff out of it, but they didn't get what we got down here.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess the big city corridor just got one after the other. I was down in the Washington D.C. area, and it was just one. It was that, and then one 5-6 inch snowstorm after another.
Unbelievable. So, all right. So we'll come back. We'll make a point in the middle of January to come back and do this all over again, and we'll review the first half and look ahead to the second half, and we'll see if me being a cranky, contrary curmudgeon winds up paying off or not. Mr. Rayo, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, I want to. The people on the chat board are saying, "What did Joe Rayo say we're going to get this year? 32 to 67 inches." I want to make something very clear. And for whatever reason, I typed this to go on the chat board, and I'm hitting enter, and it's not.
If it's over 200 characters, Mr. Rayo, which I have a feeling it is, it's not going to take it. So you got to do it in two pieces.
All right. So I'll say it right here. I'll say
Joe is the Shakespeare of weather.
I did not say that I was forecasting 32 to 67 inches of snow. What I said was, if you look at the 3 previous low snow years, like this past winter at Central Park, the very next year, anywhere from 8 to 14 times more snow fell in the following year. So if you take that at face value, then you would see possibly this year 32 to 67 inches. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll have a modest snow year with one possible biggie that'll account for the lion's share of the snow. I think we could see 25 to maybe 30 inches of snow at Central Park this season, and we'll see how that all pans out.
All right. And by the way, this show is going to be up as a podcast on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Anchor, and a whole host of other places that call podcasts home. So this is actually a good show for you to just kind of put on your earbuds and get on the treadmill for 1 hour and 56 minutes, which Joe Rayo is a new record for us. The old record was 1 hour and 54 minutes. I think this is a new record show length for us. I mean, we're practically we're practically an ABC television movie.
Can we go for another 6 minutes and round it out to exactly 2 hours? Or
Well, we could. It may take us a long time to say goodbye.
yes, well, it'll take you that long to do the commercial.
Oh, well, that's right. Yes. Oh, thanks for reminding me, because yes, we do have to do
Oh,
that.
and I do have one other thing to mention here, which I don't know if you mentioned at the start, and I don't know if they're still on, but Steve LaPont and New York Jet Fan 1991, thank you for hitting super chats tonight.
Which we
They hit that.
yes, thank you
They
very
hit
much
that
for
back
hitting
at the
super
very
chat.
beginning, Joe, back around 7:30.
Yeah, I think they hit it before the show before the show started. Yes, thank you, both of you, for hitting super chat. We Joe and I really greatly appreciate it.
And
So-
Janet Dunn, say hello to Nick Stefano for me.
I don't see them much, lately. It's I've been diverted with doing a lot of other things, and doing an online weather forum that
Okay,
I'm a
well,
moderator of now. So
Well, Janet, you guys, if you want to do a night with the a Zoom with the North Jersey Weather Observers, just let me know, and I'll be more
I'll
than
pass
happy
that
to do
on to
it.
them. Yeah.
And Joe Ferranda, thank you for joining us. Hope you had fun.
Thanks again, Joe. It was fun.
Anytime. And we're going to try to do this more with respect to bringing the Patreon folks on board with these shows where we have guests on, so that you can ask your questions. The Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight brought our winter special, because Bill Goodman made it special. He really did. The Joe and Joe Weather
Thank
Show
you.
tonight brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider, Bill. And they're on 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, just north of the Southern State Parkway. So when you run out of rock salt, mag ice, melting pellets and flakes, Petalo Premium Snow and Ice Melter, Biomelt, Geomelt, or whatever it is that you need to clean up for all the winter storms you're going to get, because I'm predicting them and you're not. You can go to Omni True Value Hardware, West Babylon, 631-756-1125, or go to the website, which is omnitruevalue.com. And
Latex Dreams wants to know from Joe Ferranda, who's the ball player that's behind you?
it's Derek Jeter, isn't it?
I think it's Derek
Yeah,
Jeter.
one of the greatest shortstops.
It's Derek
Yeah,
There
Jeter.
we go.
Yep.
Number 2,
Derek Jeter.
Jeter. Number 2.
Number 2. All right, folks. Thanks for being here. And Bill, we'll see you soon. Talk to you in a minute. We'll say goodbye.
Yeah, probably. Always a pleasure. Can't wait to. I'm sure I'll be on even before January, but we'll see. We'll see how things work out.
Yeah, no, like I said, you are always welcome. I will stop and drop everything that I am doing to get you on this show, as long as you promise to make sure you set an alarm clock if you're going to fall asleep at showtime. Okay.
I was gonna set an alarm clock just in case tonight, but I had so many graphics to get ready. There was no way I had to worry about it tonight.
Okay, because you did make me nervous at 7:27, and I didn't get the graphics yet, and I didn't get you didn't punch in on the Zoom link. I'm thinking, no, please, not again. I can't. I've already promoted this 3 times. I can't do this again. But the gods were smiling on us even after we did have that slightly shaky start at the beginning. So, all right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. I know it was a long show, so I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you tomorrow on